Oh, come on! As Mr. Sloman always says, there is no I in team, but there's an I in pie. And there's an I in meat pie. Meat is an anagram of team. I don't really know what he's talking about. What I do know is that there's also an I in stupid, and your teammates in Aliens Colonial Marines are the biggest, most selfish bunch of moronic bastards I've ever had the displeasure of playing with. Welcome to another review from the Broken Controller Club. My name is Ed, continuing through what I've dubbed Bad Game Summer, an event that I've made up and am increasingly regretting. Today I'm talking about the gaming abortion that is Aliens Colonial Marines. Most of the bad games I'm reviewing seem to be getting worse than the last, and I kind of feel like Dante visiting the circles of hell in Inferno at this point. So this game has a reputation, just like my recently reviewed Duke Nukem Forever, to have gone through multiple developers while also still having Gearbox's name slapped on the label. Sega gave Gearbox the freedom to write and design the game like they wanted, and having a lot of Aliens fans on staff over there certainly didn't hurt. To help with authenticity, they even hired visual futurist Sid Mead, who helped design movies like Aliens, Blade Runner, Tron, 2010, and a lot more movies that you're probably familiar with. It appeared that the intentions were there to make a great, loyal Aliens experience. However, as many of us functioning adults know, your intentions don't count for a whole lot, and people will be paying attention to what the actual outcome is. So Colonial Marines was originally supposed to be a squad-based shooter. Gearbox was riding the wave of success that came with Borderlands and started working on Borderlands 2 and outsourced Colonial Marines to Timegate Studios. While this was going on, apparently Sega wanted the game to have more human enemies in it and less aliens, which was obviously stupid because it's not called Humans Colonial Marines. Cue a bunch of delays and Gearbox having to fix what was there, and I use that word loosely after having played it, because what Timegate left them wasn't able to even run on the PS3, and the game released February of 2013. For reference, it was announced in 2008. Story-wise, the game is supposed to be considered canon as it takes place between Aliens and Alien 3, and fills in some of the details on what happened, almost like a story that runs kind of parallel to them. You won't see Ripley in this, obviously, because she's off on her own miserable journey that should never have happened. You will, however, see Hicks, another bishop, and what's left of Hudson, though. You play as Corporal Winter, who is part of a group of Marines tasked with rescuing survivors from the Sulaco spaceship. Things go awry because of the alien infestation there, and that takes them from the Sulaco back to Hadley's Hope on planet LV-426, which was the setting from Aliens. So now that we know Aliens was supposed to be a squad-based game, how did it end up? Well, like corn-riddled that's how. It's 7 to 10 hours of shooting aliens and occasionally other humans while looking at the same low-res corridors, caves, ship interiors, and weird H.R. Geiger alien decorating. The graphics remind me of Instagram influencers. They look terrible up close, and no matter what angle you're seeing them from, all you see is ass. It's occasionally a blessing in disguise that this game is so dark, because in their defense, you can only make pipes and boxes so interesting. The AI teammates look the same way. At first, I thought they looked kind of alright, but after you're in better lit areas, they look pretty terrible. Bishop and Hicks look kinda sorta like the actors, and when I found Hudson's corpse, I could tell it was him. I don't know, he had Bill Paxton-like qualities. As a side note, Hudson's apparent death by chest burster in this seems like BS considering he was last seen pulled through the floor by xenomorphs. I can't imagine that at that point they would have kept him around long enough to stick a face hugger on him and leave him. I don't know, that's just me. If you have a different theory, let me know in the comments. The xenomorphs mostly look like their movie versions, though there's not much variety to them in this. You've got your standard aliens, and there's also some that spit acid at you. There's the requisite queen that's in everything, and also these hilariously stupid ones in the sewers that only react to sound. If they hear you, they come shuffling over and get in your face, which I guess is supposed to be creepy, but was more funny than anything else. Like these ones. I feel like they're gonna sell me something. Hello, we're from the government's Ministry of Truth and heard you haven't had your COVID vaccine yet. You're not willingly reading misinformation on social media, are you? Shooting any of these idiots looks like they're splattered in neon paintballs, and when they die, they just kind of wilt and fall over. I can't explain why, but they look kind of sad when they died. Also, from far away, they just look like stick figures. There's no dread in encountering them like in the movies. The Queen is huge, but then she went from being a novelty to being used in these movies like so many times now that the thrill of seeing her is gone. Kind of like seeing any Terminators in movies after T2. The sound in general is mixed poorly, especially for voices. The cutscenes are mostly audible, but when playing the actual game, any chatter between the characters is really quiet on default, and it sounds more like bitchy muttering. The actual voice acting is fine though. Michael Biehn and Lance Henriksen both sound great, and this isn't surprising because, let's be honest, Michael Biehn is amazing in everything he's in. He is the once and future Kyle Reese. Also, if you haven't played Far Cry Blood Dragon, you need to immediately buy that after this video is finished. Anyways, I got sidetracked. When you're not feeling like you're deaf and trying to hear what they're saying, you just hear your pulse rifle. Then you hear other human enemies with their pulse rifles. And then you hear the other Marines with their pulse rifles. So yeah, I got really sick of pulse rifles by the end of this game. Now the gameplay itself is pretty awful, and that's even after all the patching they've done. You basically go in a linear path, you shoot some aliens or humans, and you move forward a little, then you do it again, and then repeat that for the whole game. You can sprint, but that's pretty much the worst thing you can possibly do because whenever you think the enemies are done attacking and the area is clear for you to proceed through, more is going to show up out of nowhere. So there's lots of inching forward. If it sounds tedious, it's because it is. Checkpoints aren't as common as I would have liked, so getting killed at some parts would require me to play entire sections again. That's not so much of a problem if I like the game, but having that happen in this was pretty painful. What's probably the second most irritating part of the combat are the aliens. Simply put, they're retarded and they just rush you. Like, constantly. I'd say 90% of the fights I was in, they would ignore the other Marines and just make a beeline for me. Other times they run off and hide for a moment and then they come back out, or they just sit there like they're squatting to drop a deuce. One time they jumped me and I had to mash square to get him off of me, and then he backed up, turned his back to me, and just stood there and I shot him until he died. It was like he got discouraged and started sulking in a corner. Your teammates are unbelievably stupid and rarely help you when you need it. A lot of times I felt like it was personal and they were actually trying to set me up to die. Like they'll either sit there and just watch the door to the next area, or once you kill everything, they'll turn around and shoot at something random, like they were pretending to help out to make me feel better. At one point, one of my teammates goes, "I've got you covered," and then he let me get killed almost immediately. Other fun things they like to do are standing in front of you constantly so that you can't get a shot off at anything, because you're just looking at ass the whole time. They also like to crowd doorways and not only force you to open most of the doors and get shot at first, as if the enemies would go for anyone else anyway, but they also hog all the corners, so you can rarely take cover to hide from enemy gunfire. I mean, why do they need cover if everything skips them and goes straight for me to begin with? I have to mention that the cover only helps a portion of the time anyway, because human enemies will shoot you through it. It was huge fun to find that out and didn't make me swear at all. There's a decent amount of weapons to choose from, and you get to choose a primary and secondary weapon along with grenades and a pistol. Unfortunately, and this is easily the most irritating part of probably the whole game for me, the guns are horribly inaccurate, especially the rifles. Aiming down sights shows this red dot swaying to these extremes that feel like your character is really drunk or aiming for a fly buzzing around. So that leaves shotguns, which are the most effective weapons to avoid aiming with, but then they're only for close range, so they're useless against human enemies that are far away. Also, the vertical accuracy of rifles is really terrible too, with the climb of these being really severe when you're firing. In fact, you don't even get a weapon that can aim competently until you unlock the battle rifle, which I think I unlocked in the last maybe 2/3 of the game. And with that, you can snipe enemies from far away. Until then, you might as well just hip fire everything that comes at you, as aiming down a scope leaves your peripheral so vulnerable that aliens will come in and kill you before you realize where the damage is coming from. Weapon unlocks in this game are done by leveling up, and with each level comes a special point that you can use to unlock various add-ons for your weapons. The vast majority of unlocks are new sights, which, as I just mentioned, don't really help because the aiming is already badger shit. But some others are new skins or alternate ammunition like flame rounds or grenades, things like that. You can also find legendary weapons like Hicks's shotgun, Hudson's pulse rifle, stuff like that. I thought this was kind of funny because I don't know how legendary you can be considered if you're one of the many Marines and aliens to get snuffed out really effortlessly in the first half of the movie. Obviously, Hicks and Hudson notwithstanding. Now, if you're a masochist and you've heard all of this and it still sounds like a lot of fun to you, then please know that the fun doesn't stop there, as there's bugs aplenty in this. Granted, they're mostly visual bugs and don't really affect the gameplay. Plenty of times I'd shoot an enemy and they just explode, even with normal bullets. Once I killed an enemy soldier and he turned into a box of ammo, like his body just disappeared. Some of the aliens would disappear immediately when I killed them as well. There was one time, and I really regret that I didn't get this recorded, but I killed an alien, and while the rest of the game was running fine, I had blown the bottom half of his body off and the remaining top half was like slow motion falling to the ground in what I can only describe as like maybe a fourth of the normal speed of the game. It was absolutely hilarious and I couldn't get it to happen again. I also found out the hard way that when tutorial prompts came up that they didn't pause the game and you could still get killed by something while reading them. So what did I like in this? There's a little bit there that I liked. It had a hell of a lot more action than Duke Nukem, so I was happy about that. Also, there's a lot of times in this game where you're going to have to operate machinery like cranes or use a torch to cut open a locked door, and you don't have to do anything but hit the action button. There's no rapid tapping, there's no weird analog crap, there's no hacking puzzles that you have to figure out. You just hit a button and the game does it for you. Also, the story doesn't really serve a purpose other than to bring back Hicks and Bishop, and honestly that was good enough for me. It sucked not seeing Ripley, but Hicks also got screwed pretty badly in Alien 3, at least in the beginning of it, and this game's story actually explains what happened and why he's back in this one. The rest of the crew has like zero personality, and there's one chick named Bella who you meet and she talks about a face hugger getting on her. You can take a wild guess what happens to her later. Somebody should have told her to order the soup and not the special.
Check, please.
Other than her though, the body count is actually kept extremely low through the whole game. It was actually a little bit boring. A funny little side bit about the Marines in this too. Like I was saying, you have like zero connection to anybody in this game except for maybe like Hicks and Bishop. So there's a part towards the end of it where you're running around and you're rescuing some of the Marines because you need help leading like this final assault on Weyland-Yutani or something. I don't even remember anymore. I blocked most of this game out of my mind. And as you're doing it, you're getting paired up with a bunch of random squad members. So you're looking around at these people and like, you know, you're just now finding out what their names are and stuff. And I'm going, wow, this game actually succeeded in making me care even less about what was going on than, you know, for the first, 9 hours of this game, I guess. It was just kind of funny to me. So with all that said, I have finally arrived at my verdict, which is that this game does have a passable story, if only because of Hicks and Bishop returning. Otherwise, Aliens Colonial Marines is a mess even after being patched with really ugly graphics and not being helped out by a lot of graphical glitches and bugs, guns that can't shoot the broadside of a barn or whatever that saying is, and enemies that completely ignore your brain-dead teammates and only go for you. It is a frustrating experience, and now that I've beaten it, I don't ever want to play it again, like not even on a dare. And that's it for today's review. As always, becoming a club member is easy and fun. Just hit the subscribe button and you're in. As an added bonus, you'll get to know when new videos pop up. Until next time. Congratulations! You're one of an elite few to make it to the end of the video. Reward yourself by hitting the round subscribe button in the middle, and then check out the other goodies I've got in the links next to it.